Maybe give him a minute. He's talking to Bill.
Oh, is he? Yeah. We're standing at the thing. The girls are like, oh, please don't say something.
What's that?
Yeah.
Oh, the girls, yeah.
Yeah, they're nervous. Should we walk around? Don't they still call him?
Here, this is you. Okay, this is you. Please take your seats. We are going to begin shortly, as in 30 seconds. Good afternoon, shalom, and thank you all so very much for coming today. We have some amazing people in the audience. United States Ambassador to the United Nations, Ms. Linda Thomas Greenfield. Israel's Ambassador to the United Nations, Danon. That's right. Distinguished guests from the Israeli Foreign Ministry in Jerusalem, we welcome you. UN ambassadors from all around the world, thank you so much for being here. Family members of the victims and hostages, including Rabbi Peretz, Naama and Nadav Miran, Ali Ziadna, Yael Alexander, and Sigal Mansuri. members of the Israeli, Jewish, American community, and all of our honored guests, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Remembrance and Resilience, October 7th, a year on. I'm Liz Klayman, anchor at the Fox Business Network, and a proud Jew. I cannot tell you how honored I am to be your MC this afternoon. Today, what we are going to do is we are gathering to honor the lives tragically taken by Hamas terrorists during the brutal attack on Israel, October 7th of 2023. It's been a whole year. And then, of course, the lives taken since. We stand in solidarity with the wounded and remember the 101 Israeli citizens still held hostage by Hamas in Gaza. These individuals and their families have faced unimaginable suffering, and today we demand the immediate release of all the hostages. Their freedom is our highest collective priority, and we stand united in our call for their safe return. This gathering is not only about remembrance, but also to reflect on, and this word should be familiar to all Israelis, resilience. Resilience of the Israeli people and the solidarity of the global community in standing against terrorism. Let us come together today as we reaffirm our commitment to peace, security, and hope for all. Please rise for a moment of silence to honor all of the victims. Thank you. At this time, I would like to invite Cantor Netanel Hirschtick from the Hampton Synagogue to lead us in the traditional memorial Jewish prayer, El Maleh Rachamim.
Please rise. El Maleh Rachamim Shochen b'Aramim Ametzeh menucha nechona תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים טהורים וגיבורים כזוהר הרקיע מהירים ומזהירים לנשמות הקדושים אזרחי ישראל נשים וטף שנהרגו שנרצחו שנשרפו שנרבחו בידי מרצחי החמאס בני הבלה ומסרו נפשם על קידוש השם בהתקפה אכזרית בבוקר שמחת תורה על יישובי מדינת ישראל ולנשמות לחיילי צבא הגנה לישראל שוטרי משטרת ישראל ואנשי כוחות הביטחון שמסרו נפשם על קדושת השם ונפלו מות גיבורים בקרבות על הגנת העם והארץ. שכולנו מתפללים לעילוי נשמותיהם לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם בגן עדן תהא מנוחתם הוא נחלתם. בשלום על משכבותם
Thank you, Cantor, very, very much. Oh, we have heard so many comparisons that have been made between the Nazi Holocaust and what happened on October 7th. Not just senseless, but incredibly savage and brutal murders of innocent people. There are so many stunningly painful parallels. The piles of shoes of the victims, bodies burned. But I would argue there is one very important comparison that isn't mentioned by many: the video evidence. Both the Nazis and the Hamas terrorists captured their bloody acts on video and film. Those images, while nightmare-inducing to this day, they are horrifying, but they are also the evidence needed to show the world what happened so the world never forgets. The clip you are about to see was not taken by a terrorist. The clip you are about to watch captures one of the many horrific moments of October 7th. It shows a group of young adults who fled the Nova Music Festival and sought shelter as a flood of Hamas terrorists came in by hiding in a bomb shelter. They were ambushed by the terrorists who surrounded them, and they had nowhere to go, nowhere to escape. They were trapped, and the terrorists threw grenades into that shelter. With nowhere to escape, they fought valiantly to protect themselves and each other. 16 young men and women, with their whole lives ahead of them, were killed. 4 were kidnapped and dragged into Gaza, and 7 miraculously survived this tragic event. One of the victims, Ayelet Harnin, a young journalist who was trapped inside that shelter, had the presence of mind to bravely videotape what was happening and what they were enduring. The atrocities lasted for more than 3 hours. Her camera continued to film even as they executed her. Her footage captures the sheer cruelty and barbarity of terrorism, but is also testament to the love, friendship, and heroism of young Israelis who were trapped inside that bomb shelter. This brief but very powerful clip includes some of the footage she captured. It is extremely difficult to watch, but consider the alternative. Turning away from the brave Israelis in their darkest hour, we must not do that. We will now roll the video.
שלום זיו.
שלום.
מה לדעתך החשיבות של פרסום ההקלטה הזאת?
זה קודם כל להבין באמת מה עברנו שם. להרגיש את הפחד הזה, את היריות, ממש להרגיש את מה שאנחנו חווינו. רצה לכיוון האוטו, ואני אומרת לעצמי, אני לא נשארת כאן, אין סיכוי. ואנחנו מתחילים את הנסיעה לכיוון היציאה.
בדרך כבר שם ממש שומעים את הצבע האדום. ראינו מיגונית, פשוט עצרנו, וזה היה הדבר הכי הגיוני לעשות זאת.
האחרון שנכנס לתוך המיגונית זה היה הנר. הוא הגיע, אמר, תקשיבו, יש פה חדירת מחבלים ענקית, זה לא משהו רגיל. יש פה אלפים בשטח של ישראל. חצי דקה אחרי זה כבר הם היו אצלנו.
אתה שומע את הצרחות שלהם בחוץ ואתה משקשק. התחלתי להרגיש כאילו אני באיזה סרט אימה או משהו. שניות ספורות לאחר מכן, אתה שומע משהו מתגלגל פנימה בכניסה של המיגונית.
זה רק רימון.
לא.
תדחוק את הרימון!
דחקת?
אתה לוחם, אחי.
זה מלך.
שלא יזרקו לי. לא.
זוכר שהם זרקו שתיים ביחד. אחד נחת לידי, אז תפסתי אותו וזרקתי אותו החוצה. ואז זה שהיה יותר עמוק, התפוצץ בפנים והוציא לנו את הרוח מהמפרשים, אפשר לומר. אתה רואה, אתה יושב בכניסה, ממש אומר, אין לי יד. אחרי זה, בפעם הבאה שפתחתי את העיניים, לאיזו שנייה, כבר היה מחבל בכניסה של המיגונית.
יאללה, בשווקים! هاي مخاخهم الكلاب هاي حطوا عقوله جوا
بكشا
تعال على منطقه تعال
ايش لما نجمعها بكشا سلام
تعال سلام اطلع العيش يطلع حملوهم استنون انا عارض دولتكم هاتوا
הם חזרו פנימה ועשו וידוי הריגה. זה מה שבאמת הרג את רוב האנשים.
לא.
השלב הבא שאני זוכרת זה שאני נחנקת, לא מצליחה לנשום, בבור של גופות כאילו.
זה השנייה שהבנתי שזה נגמר. ששרדנו את הדבר הכי נוראי שבן אדם יכול לתאר לעצמו.
May their memories be a blessing. Israel's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Israel Katz, cannot be with us today due to the security situation in Israel. However, he really wanted to share a special message with you.
Dear friends, 1 year ago, on October 7th, the axis of evil, led by Iran, started a war against Israel. Thousands of Hamas terrorists attacked Israel, murdered over 1,200 people, raped women, mutilated bodies, and burned babies alive. They kidnapped over 250 people, babies, children, women, and men. 101 of our brothers and sisters are still being held as hostages in Gaza's terror tunnels. 1 year later, Israel is fighting on 7 fronts to ensure its security. Israel is protecting the free world by fighting the war against Iran and its proxies, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and Shia militias in Iraq and Syria. Israel eliminated Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, most of Hezbollah leadership, and destroyed most of Hezbollah missiles, but we still have a long way to go. Last week, Iran fired dozens of ballistic missiles at Israel. I promised you here, we will respond with strength and power. I have no doubt we will defeat all our enemies and expand the circle of peace and normalization in the region after the war. I really wanted to be with you today, but due to the current situation, it wasn't possible. I promise you, we will not stop the war until we will bring back all our hostages home. We will remember our victims and pray for the safety of our brave soldiers. From here, Jerusalem, the Jewish ancient capital, I want to wish you all Happy New Year, Shana Tova, Am Israel Chai. Thank you.
It is now my distinct privilege to introduce one of the bravest men I know. In his role as Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Mr. Danon has literally faced and entered the lion's den, but he has done so with unbelievable courage, all the while forming bonds and friendships with other countries, many other countries, some of whom are here represented today. I kind of see Danny as a diplomatic version of the Iron Dome, protecting Israel from constant incoming attacks with strength, intelligence, and unwavering will. We welcome Ambassador Danon to the stage.
Good afternoon. I welcome you all to this gathering at the United Nations, where we commemorate a year since the tragic events of October 7. Today, we gather to remember, to honor, and to stand united in the face of this darkest chapter. I would like to extend my deepest thanks to U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, distinguished ambassadors, UN officials, Israel's Consul General, and Jewish community leaders for joining us here today. October 7th was not just another dark day in Jewish history. It was our worst nightmare come to life. On that day, evil didn't knock at our door. It broke it down. Terrorists stormed our land, massacring, raping, and kidnapping our brothers and sisters. They showed no mercy. They butchered men, women, and children. Entire families, shattering lives, and tearing apart our communities in the most brutal and unimaginable ways. It was a day that tested our very existence, a day that seared itself into the collective soul of our people. The shockwaves of that day were felt around the world. Jewish communities across the globe felt our suffering, the pain of seeing their brothers and sisters brutalized. It was a moment that shook us all to our deepest core. But it was also a moment that revealed something deeper, the strengths we carry and the resilience of our people. Our hearts break for the victims, for the brave soldiers who gave their lives to defend us, for the families who have been torn apart, and for the 101 innocent souls still held in the terror tunnels of Gaza. They are more than just hostages. They are mothers, fathers, sons and daughters whose lives have been stolen. Their absence is felt every day by their families, their loved ones, and by every one of us. To the hostages and their families, we say this: you are not forgotten. Every day, every moment, we carry you with us. We will never stop fighting for you. We will never stop until every last one of you is back home. Your names, your faces, your stories are forever etched into our hearts, and we will make sure the world cannot look away. No matter how long it takes, no matter how difficult the road, we will bring you back. This is our promise, and we will not rest until it is fulfilled. From that day of horror, we rise. We rise from the ashes and from our grief. We gather strength, because that is who we are. In the face of the worst kind of evil, we do not fall apart. We come together, we fight back. Our enemies believe that they can destroy us through brutal pain and suffering. They believe that if they cause enough grief, tear apart enough families, and take enough innocent lives, we would crumble under the weight of that pain. But they are wrong. What they don't realize is that the very pain they have inflicted revealed our enormous strength, a strength that we had no other choice but to find. Every tear shed for a loved one lost, every moment of grief, and every wound imposed on our people has not broken us. It has forced us to fortify our spirit like never before. We stand here today in the United Nations, an institution that has failed us time and time again. When the massacre of October 7 unfolded, the UN refused to act. It could not find the most basic morality to condemn the brutal murder of innocent civilians. It could not bring itself to call out the atrocities for what they were. Instead of standing with the innocent, this institution remained silent. And when it finally found its voice, it did not speak for justice. It chose to vilify the country fighting to protect its people from the monsters who massacred them. The UN has failed in its most basic mandate to protect the innocent and condemn evil. The resolutions that the UN did pass were about the situation in Gaza. Believe me, we have no desire to be in Gaza. I am telling you that from personal experience. My late father, Joseph Danon, a hero who gave his life for the nation, fought in Gaza during the Six-Day War. I myself patrolled the streets of Gaza in the Gulf War in the early 90s, and my eldest son has been serving in the Gaza Brigade since October 7. This war was forced upon us, yet we are willing to pay the price. We are willing to do what we must. Regardless of the condemnations, regardless of the bias, Israel will achieve its goals. We will bring our hostages home. We will defeat those who seek our destruction. 70 years ago, 70 years ago, the UN voted for the Jewish people to have a state, a homeland. For when the day came, we would have the strength to stand up and push back against those who seek our destruction. That day has come, and that is exactly what we intend to do. The days when the Jewish people were at the mercy of tyrants are over. The days when we had to rely on foreign powers to protect us are over. The difference between the past and today is very simple. Now we are not defenseless. Today, the Jewish people have a strong state, a powerful military, and the courage to protect ourselves. We are the Lions of Judah, and we will defend our people with all the strength and righteous fury we have. From the soldiers on the front lines to Jewish communities across the world, we stand in solidarity and take to the streets. We stand as one people, united in purpose and might, now and forever. Am Israel Chai.
Am I right? The diplomatic version of the Iron Dome. Thank you, Ambassador Danon. Today we are joined by many UN ambassadors from nations that stand firmly alongside Israel in the fight against terrorism. Among these allies is a true friend and staunch ally. Our next speaker represents a nation that has stood shoulder to shoulder with Israel through every challenge. The United States has been a beacon of support in the fight against global terrorism. Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield is the energy powering that beacon. And it is with immense pride and respect that we welcome Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield.
Good afternoon, colleagues and friends, and thank you so much for that introduction. And thank all of you for being here today to commemorate this very, very sad day. I'm honored to be here to remember the victims of October 7th. In the Jewish tradition, a child who loses a parent is considered an avo, a mourner, for an entire year. That period of mourning is filled with rituals and traditions passed down from generation to generation. There's comfort, it is believed, to be found in prescription. But when it comes to a tragedy like the one we commemorate today, an event that carries such unbearable sadness, such unbearable weight, there's no roadmap or routine. How do you mourn the loss of more than 1,200 people? Not only children who lost parents, but children killed in their mothers' and fathers' arms, Holocaust survivors gunned down in their homes, teenagers murdered at a music festival, women and girls raped, beaten, mutilated, entire families, entire kibbutzim massacred in what was the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And the horrors didn't end that day. As we remember those killed on October 7th, we cannot forget the hundreds taken hostage. The men, women, and children stolen from their communities and held in tunnels beneath Gaza. More than 100 have been reunited with their families as a result of concerted diplomacy, and a much smaller number have been rescued. Others were brutally murdered by Hamas after months and months in captivity. And then there are those who wait, now for 365 days, desperate to see their loved ones, desperate to see another day. And yet, there are those in the Security Council and outside who fail to condemn Hamas's atrocities or even say the word Hamas. There are those in the region who have sought to build on Hamas's actions and are now pushing the Middle East to the precipice of a broader war. Terrorist groups like the Houthis and Hezbollah, whose Iranian-supplied missiles rain down on Israel, and the Iranian regime itself, which has repeatedly sought to take advantage of the current situation to advance its own destructive agenda. And there are those with far less power, with far less influence on a global scale, but who have embraced bigotry and anti-Semitism in their own backyards, who make Jewish people feel unwelcome, unsafe, unworthy of empathy. How do you mourn the loss of 1,200 people? How do you mark a year since those kidnapped have seen the sky? How do you hope to heal when far too many traffic in hate? I don't claim to have the answers, and I don't think any of you do as well, but I derive strength from those who continue to put one foot in front of another, who bear witness to what happened so that it never happen again. The survivors of sexual violence who bravely came forward to share their stories, including at the United Nations, even as the world doubted them. The hostages who were freed from Hamas and told of the hell they endured, their physical and emotional scars laid bare. The hostage families who insist every single day that the world know their loved ones, not only where they are, but who they are. I met with some of those families a few moments ago, and I heard their anguish, their anger, their pain, and their frustration that we are here 1 year later. And the mourners, the people who just last week began a new year, the first without their loved ones in it, who confront the horrors of October 7th, not just on its anniversary, but every single minute of every single day, who I know would give anything to talk to their son or their daughter or their mother or father, spouse or sibling or friend one last time, who could have chosen to hate, to hurt, to hide, but who have shown unbelievable grace. I think about Yonatan Zigan, whose mother, Vivian Silver, was murdered on October 7th. Vivian was a peace activist. She brought together Israeli and Palestinian women to fight for diplomacy and coexistence. She regularly drove sick Palestinians from Gaza into Israel for medical treatment. And she was a savta, a grandmother. She loved doting on and cooking for her grandbabies, just like me and just like I know some of you. On October 7th, Hamas murdered Vivian while she hid in her safe room and then set her home on fire. A few weeks later, her son, Yonatan, went back to the house, charred, destroyed, empty, and what he said will stay with me. He said, and I quote, "I stand here and I say this is the reason to fight for peace, so this won't happen again," unquote. Perhaps the most extraordinary thing about Yonatan's statement is how unextraordinary it has become. In the past year, I've talked to dozens of people whose loved ones were murdered or taken hostage on October 7th. The family and friends of Noah and Naima, Nimrod, of Oz and Ohan, Ram, Romy, and of Hirsch. And I heard over and over again the urgent desire, the need really, to honor their beloved by pursuing the end of violence, by bringing the hostages home once and for all, by upholding their humanity and the humanity of every innocent person, Israeli and Palestinian, who deserve to live in safety, dignity, and freedom. Because let's be clear, over the past year, Palestinians and humanitarian workers have felt the horrific toll of this conflict that Hamas set into motion on October 7th. Hersh Goldberg's Poland's father said it best. There is, and I quote, a surplus of agony on all sides of the tragic conflict in the Middle East. In a competition of pain, there are no winners, unquote. There are no winners. How do you mourn the loss of more than 1,200 people? How do you mourn so much tragedy, so much pain and agony, so much loss? How do you mourn? In the Jewish tradition, we are an Avel for 12 months, but we know tomorrow, which is the one-year mark of October 7th, has come and gone. The pain will still be there. And so we must be there. We must be there too, all of us, to work for a ceasefire with the release of all the hostages to begin abating the surplus of agony, to lift up those grieving, those healing, those fighting for loved ones still trapped in the tunnels, to honor and remember and name the dead, to talk about the families they loved and dreams they had and the good they did, and then do some good ourselves, to make their memories a blessing and create a more peaceful world for us all. How do we mourn? Am Yisrael Hai, the people of Israel live. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. We now welcome Rabbi Rabbi Peretz and the families of those taken hostage during the horrific events of October 7th. Rabbi Peretz faced unimaginable heartache. This family suffered actually a double tragedy on October 7th when they learned that Rabbi Peretz's eldest son, Yonatan, was injured and his second son, Daniel, was missing. After 163 totally agonizing days, the Peretz family learned of Daniel's death. He was killed on that bloody Saturday after an unbelievably heroic battle to protect Kibbutz Nahal Oz. His body was captured and remains in Gaza today. Despite the overwhelming grief, Rabbi Peretz continues to reconcile his profound heartache with his staunch Zionism. Rabbi Peretz stands as a testament to faith, resilience, and unwavering hope. Please join me in welcoming the rabbi and, of course, honoring the families who are here.
His Excellency, Israeli Ambassador to the UN, Danon, Her Excellency, the US Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas Greenfield, and thank you for your beautiful words. Israeli Consul General to New York, Mr. Ophir Akunis, Your Excellencies, ambassadors from around the world to the UN, community leaders, ladies and gentlemen, I stand here on behalf of 101 hostages and their families. Who would believe today, 1 year later, October 7th, our son, along with 100 others, remain hostage in Gaza. But I stand specifically on behalf of my wife and I and our family for our son Daniel, together with Ali Ziadna for his brother and nephew, Yusuf and Hamza, Bedouin Muslims who remain captive in Gaza, and together with Nadav and Naama Miran, and their nieces. Alma, who was 6 months old when her father was taken captive, doesn't know him, prays for him every day, along with Lishai and their entire family. Muslims and Jews, women and men, young and old, from 26 nationalities, including Joshua Malta, a 21-year-old Tanzanian student who was killed in captivity. The Bibas family, all 4 of them, including then Kfir, 9 months old, today 1 year and 9 months. Shlomo Mansur, 86 years old today. I think the best way that I can share with you what it's been like for those 163 days, what we as the hostage families are still going through, is to share a story that happened when I asked my wife during our mourning period. As Your Excellency the Ambassador mentioned, how we mourn. And in our mourning period of the 7 days on the Sabbath, I said to my wife with trepidation, Shelley, how are you feeling? What she said floored me. She said to me, Danon, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I feel a sense of relief that Daniel is dead. I said, relief? I didn't feel that. She said, let me explain. I know that I have the rest of my life to mourn, but as a mother, it's my pain. I feel I can deal with my pain. I couldn't deal with every single day. I couldn't eat, not knowing if Daniel was eating, because he's a very particular eater. I couldn't deal. I could barely shower, not knowing if Daniel had any water. I know now that he did not suffer, he is not suffering, and he will not suffer. As a mother, the fact that although we have no hope, the fact that I know that he's okay, and according to Jewish tradition, in the highest place as a martyr, I feel a sense of relief. My pain is mine forever, but it's my pain, and as a mother, I can deal with that. But the angst and the worry and the fear and trepidation was too much. Ladies and gentlemen, in what world do we live that a mother feels relief at the knowledge that her son is dead? I'll tell you in what world. In the barbaric, warped world of Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Iranian Ayatollahs, in the despicable world of terrorists, torturers, and tunnel-mongerers, warped mind and perverse hearts. And why we should all care, I believe, for the following reason. Why is it something which touches every single human being? I saw this morning a conference which took place exactly 80 years ago today, one of the founding conferences of the United Nations, which began in late September 1944 and ended in Washington, was known as the Dumbarton Oaks Conference, finished on October 7th, 1944, exactly 80 years ago, when the United States, the UK, Russia and China and many other nations of the Allies came together with resolve to say we need to defeat Nazism forever. Who would have believed that in 1939, not only 6 million Jews would be brutally murdered, but 60 million people would die on the European continent? They were resolute to create an organization, when the League of Nations had become a bit passé, to stand up to Nazi evil. So too today is the call of the hour on this October 7th, 80 years later, to stand up to the horrific terror of human traffickers, not to pay ransom, and not to reward the most inhumane acts of human barbarism. You see, terror is exactly like Nazi-like activity for 3 reasons. Hamas, as they have declared time and time again, have no care for their own civilians. Ladies and gentlemen, there's not one bomb shelter in Gaza. I got caught in the ballistic missiles of Iran in Jerusalem. I went into people's homes that I didn't know and sat with them for an hour celebrating the 18-year-old daughter's birthday while 200 rockets were coming over. Every place has a bomb shelter in Israel. Not one. Not one. Zero care for their own civilians, as they themselves say. Only terror tunnels to protect the terrorists themselves. Secondly, if you have no care for your own civilians, why would you care about anyone else's civilians? Of course you indiscriminately will fire and kill and maim and murder. If you don't care about your own, why would you care about others? It's not combatants against combatants. It's combatants against civilians. Of the 250 hostages, around 90% were civilians from around 30 countries. And worst of all, as I like to suggest, ladies and gentlemen, perhaps the most despicable, inhumane act of all hostage taking? Who takes a 9-year-old baby? Who takes grandparents? Who takes indiscriminately Muslims, Jews, Christians, young and old? I'll tell you who. The Muslims have always called the Jewish people the people of the book. The book is the Bible shared by Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. And in the Old Testament, in Genesis chapter 6, when the deluge, the flood came, there is an incredible word. The first time the Hebrew word Hamas is used. It says, why did God decide of the terrible act to destroy the world, the experiment of humanity which did not work first time around? He said, the book says, the reason why, Vatimalei haaretz Hamas. The world was filled with Hamas. What does this word, which appears many times in the Bible in Hebrew, Hamas, mean? Incredibly, one of the most ancient commentators, known as Onkelos the convert, a convert to Judaism, and a great commentator many thousands of years ago, said, I'll tell you what it means. Vatimalei haaretz chatufin. Why did the world lose its raison d'etre to exist? When people had no respect, not only for property, but with violence would pull babies out of their cribs, grandparents from their families, and snatch them. When there is no basic rights of anyone to exist in freedom, it's supposed to be as secure as a house. When you can traffic in human beings and not value the essence of God and the godliness in every human being, you lose your moral raison d'etre to exist. Hamas and those who support them have lost this moral raison d'etre. We've lost our way. This is the time, today on October 7th, to call what our founders of the United Nations did, to found an organization to be above partisan politics, to be above conflicting ideologies, to stand up for a universal humanism with a moral authority. And such a moral authority has to claim the unconditional return of every single hostage, not to reward, not to pay ransom. First, return every single one, that this House should make that resolution to bring them home, humanity to bring them home. This House can bring them home. It was John Stuart Mill who said just over 150 years ago at the University of St. Andrews, famously, that all bad men need, to quote him, is for good men to look the other way in the face of evil. You cannot claim, said Mill, to be good without protesting. Not only does this House have to protest, it was founded to proactively stand for the sake of morality against inhumane barbarism. I'd like to ask, just before concluding, another fellow man of the cloth who we've become very friendly, all the hostage families, Ali, to say a few words in Arabic before I make one concluding comment. Ali, b'chavod.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. أنا علي الزيادنة، عربي مسلم إسرائيلي. أخي يوسف وأولاده انخطفوا لغزة في 17 من مكان عملهم في غلاف غزة على يد حماس. أنا واقف هنا، شاركت مسير مع صاحب السيد دانون بيرتس ونعماء ونداف ميران وكل 110 عائلات المخطوفين، لكي نذكر العالم أجمع إن حماس ما فرق بين الديانات وخطف الجميع. ولذلك نحن جئنا لهنا لكي تساعدونا في إوقاف الحرب وفي إرجاع المخطوفين وبأسرع وقت ممكن. وأنهي إن شاء الله بآية من القرآن الكريم بعدما أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: إن بعد العسر يسرا. شكرا للجميع.
One concluding comment. Amongst those killed of the 1,200 on the day were 22 Bedouins. Amongst those hostages on the day were 8 taken from the Bedouin community, all Muslims, 4 from the family of Hamza. Now is the time, I say, to stand up for all of humanity against barbarism, for human morality against inhumanity, for light, love, and life against the culture of hatred, darkness, and death. God has promised that the Jewish people will be an eternal people. As Isaiah said, Atem Eidai, you are my witnesses. It is time, please God, for all those who stand for light, love, and life, to stand up unconditionally, democratic countries or non-democratic countries, Jews, Christians, and Muslims all around the world, all nations to come together, as we did 80 years ago on this day, from across the globe and say, human morality must be above politics. Let everyone go, bring our people home for the sake of our collective human future. Thank you.
Rabbi and families, thank you so very much for your bravery. Our next guest is one of Israel's most celebrated singers who proudly represented Israel in Eurovision 2024. Since October 7th, she has used every single platform that she can find, both in Israel and around the world, in order to really advocate for Israel's right to defend itself, for peace, and for, of course, the return of the hostages. Please welcome Eden Golan performing her song, October Rain.
Writers of the history, stand with me. Look into my eyes and see. People go away but never say goodbye. Someone stole the moon tonight, took my light. Everything is black and white. Who's the fool who told you boys don't cry? Hours and flowers. Life is no game for the cowards. Why? The time goes wild. Every day I'm losing my mind, holding on in this mysterious ride, dancing in the storm. We got nothing to hide. Take me home and leave the world behind. Baby, promise me that never again I'm still wet from this October rain. October rain. Living in a fantasy, ecstasy, everything is meant to be. We shall pass, but love will never die. Hours and flowers. Life is no game for the cowards. Why? The time goes wild. Every day I'm losing my mind, holding on in this mysterious ride, dancing in the storm. We got nothing to hide. Take me home and leave the world behind. Baby, promise me that never again I'm still wet from this October rain. October rain. Woo! נשאר אוויר לנשום, אין מקום, אין אותי מיום ליום, כולם ילדים טובים אחד אחד. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Okay, Eden, thank you very much. That was stunning. They only wanted to dance. Two sisters with their partners and their whole lives ahead of them, murdered at the music festival. 25-year-old Norel and 22-year-old Roya Mansuri, American-Israeli citizens, were slaughtered in cold blood by Hamas terrorists at the Supernova Music Festival on October 7th. Norel's boyfriend, Amit Cohen, was also murdered alongside the two sisters. With us today is Ms. Sigal Mansuri, the mother of Norel and Roya. Sigal, we stand with you together in your sorrow as you share the heartbreaking story of what your family has been through and promise to keep Norel, Roya, and Amit's memory alive.
Thank you for the opportunity to stand before you today and share my story. My name is Sigal Steiner Mansuri, and I am the mother of 3 beautiful children, Norel, Roya, and Shai. I speak to you today as a bereaved mother mourning the loss of my daughters since October 7, 2023. Menashe, my partner in life and the father of our children, and I once called Los Angeles home, where our children were born. I still vividly recall the morning of September 11, 2001, when innocent lives were violently taken in an act of terrorism. At that moment, I believed I had witnessed the worst atrocity imaginable. Yet, 22 years later, on October 7th, 2023, the world we once knew shattered once more. On that day, thousands of terrorists invaded Israel with a barbaric intent to murder, butcher, rape, and kidnap, leaving no one, not even the most innocent among us, untouched. The terrorists ambushed the Nova Festival, a place where young souls gather to celebrate life, and turn it into a scene of horror. My beloved daughters, Norel and Roya, attended the Nova Festival. That day, alongside Amit Cohen, my future son-in-law, the 3 of them were brutally murdered. Norel, my eldest, born in 1998, opened my heart to motherhood, while Roya, born in 2001, was not just her little sister, but also an incredible big sister to Shai, our 15-year-old son. Their kindness and vibrant spirit were a beacon of light in our family. In 2010, we chose to return to Israel, hoping to continue our lives in a land we cherished. Norel met Amit about 4 years ago in Argentina, a love story that began with a spark and evolved into a shared dream of life together. Now, cruelly cut short. Amit was not just my future son-in-law. He was like a son to me, a bright young man devoted to making Norel happy. Their wedding plans were swept away on that tragic day, along with Roya's beautiful dreams. On October 7th, we woke up to the war sirens and immediately reached our daughters. They were trying to escape the festival area when suddenly police directed them to turn back. With missiles raining down, they were forced to abandon their car and seek safety in a bomb shelter just outside of Kibbutz Reim. We later learned that in that bomb shelter, they faced the unimaginable. The terrorists began their bloodbath with automatic gunfire and grenades, then set up the shelter on fire, trapping the injured inside. Only 12 out of 40 young people inside that small bomb shelter survived. One, Omer Venkeret, was kidnapped and still held captive by Hamas. At 7:39 a.m., our communication lines went silent. From that moment, hell descended upon us. Menashe, my husband, drove south, despite the occasional missiles, focused solely on reaching the nearest area to search for the girls and Amit. He went from one hospital to another, hoping to find them among the wounded. I remained at home, desperately reaching out to local and foreign news channels and anyone willing to help in my search for the girls. For the next few days, we swung between hope and despair, grappling with terrible thought: should we hope they were dead or kidnapped by the Hamas? What kind of a world is it when a mother must consider that her beloved daughters could be lost forever or in the clutches of brutal terrorist organization? Unfortunately, our worst nightmare became our reality. On October 9th, we buried Amit. On October 12th, we buried Roya. And on October 15th, we buried Norel. 3 funerals in a single week. 3 graves upon which we could weep. My heart feels as though it is being torn apart, like molten lava burning through me. I am left with the knowledge that my 2 daughters will remain forever 25 and 22 years old, alongside Amit, who also remains 25. My angel were taking from this world forever. Instead of celebrating their achievements with diplomas and weddings, ceremonies, we were handed death certificates. How can any mother give up the dream of walking her girls down the aisles or not being a grandmother to their children? All those who were murdered alongside my daughters that day are victims of worst tragedy in the history of Israel. We are all grieving, and it's even harder to stay strong as Israel remains at war. On top of our loss, 101 hostages are still being held by Hamas in harsh conditions. Families are living in nightmare, caught between hope and despair. I pray for miracles. We all pray for miracles. I am the daughter of a Holocaust survivor. All my life, I lived with the saying, never again. In my worst nightmares, I never imagined that my 2 daughters would be brutally murdered in the land of Israel. This horrific crime is a crime against humanity. We must unite and ensure the world never sees this evil again. It is our responsibility to never forget the October 7th massacre, just as it is our obligation not to forget 9/11 attack that forever changed our world. We must cherish all the victims' memories and share their stories because now they live in our hearts. I strive to carry on as a grieving mother, making thoughtful choices and preserving for my son and Menashe, despite the weight of my sorrow. Please join me in honoring Norel, Roya, and Amit by keeping their spirit alive and continuing their legacy. Only through love and acceptance of others we can move forward and heal this broken society. I would like to thank the photographer, Ifat Peer, which is here with us today, who took on this impossible challenge to come to our home with her camera and hear the stories of 25 mothers with broken hearts. You dedicated yourself to our grief with patience and compassion, capturing the final embrace of our children. This exhibit came to life thanks to Yafit Shalev from Mom2, the World Zionist Organization, and the World Jewish Congress of Israel, and allowed us to share our stories with the world and to hear our voice. As this exhibit is named The Eternal Embrace, please remember to always, always hug your loved ones, as you never know if it will be the last hug. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here today. We know Israel faces daunting days ahead, but the one thing that the Jewish people throughout history have always had, besides the gold medal ability to kvetch here and there, is hope. Hope. Together we honor and look toward the future with hope. How appropriate then that Israel's national anthem, Hatikva, means the hope. Please rise for the singing of the national anthem. Once again, we welcome Eden Golan.
כל עוד בלבב פנימה נפש יהודי הומיה ולפתי מזרח קדימה עין לציון צופיה עוד לא אבדה תקוותנו התקווה בת שנות 2000 להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים.
Thank you for joining us today. May their memory of the victims be a blessing. Am Yisrael Hai.